I'll tell you, I'm a little confused because I've been asked to serve, I've been around for a while now. People are asking me to serve on some events or some committees. And the more I get into it, the more questions that I have, and I can't seem to get a straight answer, and I'm hoping you can help me out.
Well, let's hear your questions and let me see what I can do to try and answer them for you.
All right. First of all, as I walk around, most people don't even know what kind of insurance or who our insurance company is.
We have a major policy with a company called Aon Insurance, and it is a property plus insurance with liability and fire and theft to cover our premises and our activities.
Okay. And so how does a lodge pay for that or some higher level?
The lodge pays for it out of their general fund, and there is a certain portion of it that is being charged to the members as a per capita on their dues.
Okay. Many lodges that I talk to seem to have different people handling insurance issues each year. How do we pass this information on?
Well, the insurance should be handled by your lodge trustees and your secretary. And those officers should share the insurance policy with their lodge committees and officers.
Okay, and well, all right, in that regard then, who's covered under the lodge policy, and then when are they covered?
The lodge policy covers all members in good standing and their bona fide Elks while they are attending a Elks-sponsored event.
Suppose I'm a bartender for a second, or even a manager of a lodge. What kind of liability exposure do I have?
That's a lot of the liabilities and exposure are going to depend on the situation that you're in and the type of training that you have. It would be said that you should be, if you are in a position, you should be trained and certified.
Okay, so if I'm a member of the House Committee, for example, or a trustee, what areas of liability are each or should I be concerned about?
Well, the best thing I can tell you in regards to that is that the Grand Lodge has a manual that explains the responsibilities of the House and the trustees and of the officers. The trustees, if you were to go to our statute book, is under 12.070. And the House is under 16.040.
All right. Can we hold official events outside of the lodge and still be covered?
No, not under our insurance policy can you do that. There is a way that you can do it, and that would be that you would have to apply for and receive the proper permits from the state and the county, and you would have to buy an outside policy, as our policy does not cover us off of the premises.
All right, so that would be a third policy I'd have to go get then.
Absolutely.
All right. What is our coverage if we damage property that is not owned by the lodge?
The best thing that I could tell you is it's on an individual basis. I would probably go to your lodge policy and see what your lodge has opted to cover and not cover.
Okay. Can the lodge ever sell alcohol outside of the lodge, such as a country fair?
No. You can. It's just like an outside event. You can apply for an outside license from your ABC. You can apply for an outside insurance and permits, but you cannot do it on the lodge's licenses or insurance.
Okay. My favorite. Do warning signs like park at your own risk cover us or open us up to other areas?
No, it actually helps us on our liabilities because we are now informing guests or members that we do not cover their vehicles or their contents well on our property.
Okay. What are lodge guests allowed or not allowed to do?
Lodge guests are allowed to come in and have the use of our facility. It does not allow them to purchase goods or services from our lodge.
Okay. What exposures does a lodge having a kitchen open you up to?
That is a great question because it comes to quite a few different answers. It would depend on whether it was the Elks operating the kitchen or if the lodge chose to let a caterer use the kitchen. So the exposures would change, and I would probably go to your lodge insurance policy.
When it comes to new candidates, their investigation, voting, initiation, what kind of pitfalls do we wind in?
Pitfalls could range depending on the situation, but I would suggest that you can limit any pitfalls by following the proper protocols and procedures and investigations and the voting to make them a member.
The insurance manual talks a lot about providing first aid, but are there any Good Samaritan implications within that?
My understanding is that the Good Samaritan is under a state law, and it would be under the individual as the Good Samaritan to decide at the point in time whether to give aid or not. I think the place to get the correct answer to that would be your state insurance chairman.
Okay. Well, speaking of first aid, what's considered proper training for first aid?
Proper training would be to be trained and be certified from a trained professional, such as an EMT or a paramedic that does the classes in first aid and CPR and first responder training.
Okay. Different subject. What lodge-affiliated corporations and group actions can jeopardize our insurance coverage?
All of them. Our association does not allow affiliated corporations to be involved with the Elks.
Okay. What is it expected of the lodge when it comes to loss prevention?
The best thing I can tell you to do is to follow your proper procedures and protocols in your manuals, keep up on your monthly checks, fill out the forms, and correct any problems that are found to limit the amount of liability you may have.
Along that thought, what kind of activities by RV and golf clubs might jeopardize coverage or open the lodge up for legal reprisals?
Well, it comes back to the earlier question. It would be all activities because they are not an acknowledged under our insurances within the lodge.
What do we need to do to minimize our exposure if we happen to have RV parking, a golf course, or a swimming pool?
I would say that you'd want to follow all your proper protocols and procedures in maintenance and oversight and make sure that you're covered correctly under your insurance programs.
If our lodge owns rental property, what kind of coverage concerns do we have there?
The lodge owns rental property. It's not covered under the Aon insurance for the lodge. So they would have to have an outside insurance policy on their rentals, and they would have to follow the guidelines set forth by the state for the rental insurance type scenarios.
Okay. Well, if I have paid employees, what kind of pitfall am I open to there?
You know, that's not in something that I could probably give you. I would probably advise that you contact your CPA, or I would contact business practices within the state association and get an answer from them.
Okay. What about our volunteers? What are they insured for? Any injuries or liabilities, or suppose our volunteer is guilty of malfeasance?
You know, my understanding is that our volunteers are covered, for accidents that are truly accidents. That was probably a better question for our state chairman to answer, to let you know exactly what the insurance is going to cover them on. But of course, when someone is negligent, that's kind of a different issue.
What level of carelessness can impact lodge liability and insurance coverage?
Well, any and all carelessness that you may have by not following all the proper procedures and protocols that are set forth and not understanding what your responsibilities are while at that facility.
Okay. What are considered best practices involving accident prevention?
Well, I can tell you that the Elks have a accident prevention manual, and it clearly goes through and it gives all of the information that you would need to be able to follow the correct procedures and practices in that matter.
And how do we minimize our chance of fire?
Well, I would minimize your chance of fire to make sure that you have all the protocols in place. You'd have all the right extinguishers, that your kitchen was equipped with the right suppression devices, that you would have someone monitor and make sure that there's nothing left by an open flame, there's no gas leaks. I mean, it comes back to doing your maintenance and keeping up on all of your protocols.
Okay. Well, in that regard, how about crime? How do we minimize our exposure to crime?
I think, to minimize your crime is to, of course, make sure you have proper locks, maybe alarms, maybe some video surveillance, make sure that all of your volunteers are properly educated in the procedures to lock things up and minimize it as low as possible. And you know how crime is. If they want in, they'll get in. You just have to do the best you can.
Okay. What is our exposure if our lodge impacts the local environment?
That's always a great question, Phil, because it's always going to depend on what the exposure is. Is the exposure some kind of a leaking of fluids, or is it an exposure of noise? Is it exposure of being over a line, maybe improper use of someone else's property? Those would have to be something that you'd want to investigate with your county and your city and your state to see, what you may have on your property and limit as much as you can.
What's covered when private vehicles are involved?
The RA on insurance policy does not cover private vehicles. It comes back to having the signs posted that we do not cover them in the parking lot. They should be properly insured. If you're doing an event where your members are going to use their vehicles to do the event, I would think that the lodge would want to make sure that that vehicle was properly insured with all of the insurance policies, and to get a copy of that to keep on file to know that they would be covered.
Okay. Well, liability concerns, and I don't know if you're ready for this one or not, regarding our website and our IT structures.
As our organization has changed, Grand Lodge is actually addressing that right now. I don't know that there's a great answer for that, because we didn't used to get ourselves out there in the public, and we found that by not doing so, we need to do it. Grand Lodge has put together a committee that is working right now on the types of things that we can put out in the infrastructures on the air and what we want to get out there. Mm-hmm. And I think the best answer to that is to get a committee started within the lodge to then go to the seminars and to contact Grand Lodge and get their feelings and find out what exactly they believe we should be doing.
All right. Regarding vendors, outside contractors that we bring in, what are our concerns there?
First off, with vendors, they won't be covered under our insurance policy. So before you allow a vendor to come on our property or to be involved, the lodge would want to make sure that they have insurance of their own. They would also want to make sure that the vendor or the contractor supplied the lodge with a copy of the insurance policy, and also name the lodge and the Elks Association as an additional insured on their policy before allowing them to come on the property or to do work or to be involved.
Okay. If a claim is made against our insurance, what is the lodge's obligation?
Well, you have an obligation to do all of your reporting, to fill out the forms. There is a manual that we have, an accident manual, accident prevention manual, and there's forms in there. And you want to talk to all parties involved. You want to get witnesses' statements. You want to take pictures. You instantly want to contact your state chairman and tell them what happened. You also want to instantly contact the insurance company, Aon, or the insurance that you have in place, and tell them what's going on. And to also, at the same time, one of the best things to do is of course, to try and make sure that you take care of whoever may have been injured or the claim that's being made.
Okay. Are there any activities or property that are just up front, strictly not covered?
That always changes with a yearly insurance policy and depending on the insurance policy. So our insurance policy at Aon has a list of events, of things that we're not covered for. So I think the best answer to that is on a yearly basis that you need to ask for as a chairman or as on a committee is to ask for a copy of that and to see if there's any changes and familiarize yourself with what we are not insured for.
Okay. I'm sorry. What is required when the lodge rents its facilities? Suppose I rent my lodge out to a third party for some activity.
Well, right off the bat, you won't be covered. The third party is not covered under our policy and our permits.
Okay.
So you want to contract with the third party. You want to get your outside permits for your bar and for your insurance. You want to get the rules and regulations of your lodge that your house committee has put together to the renter of the property. So there's a whole list of things that you really need to do to protect yourself. So it's kind of a process, and I think the lodge should have a policy or a procedure in place that would list that all out for you so that you would know what you needed to collect from that third party.
Okay. What are the pitfalls when indemnifying a third party?
The Elks do not indemnify third parties.
Period.
Period.
Okay, well, that's simple. And how does my lodge, for example, get a certificate of insurance?
They get their certificate of insurance when they've paid their premium, and the insurance policy will send it directly to them. Now,
Okay.
if you want to get one, you just have to contact our insurance. If you're talking about wanting to get an insurance policy from someone else's insurance policy, you then, from that individual, find out who their insurance agent is, and you contact that insurance agent, and you ask them for a policy to be sent directly to you.
And I guess, this is kind of a catch-all kind of a question, Dave, but what activities jeopardize our lodge's charter?
There's any unlawful non-Elks activities. You basically need to really read and understand the Grand Lodge rules and regulations. There's sections in the statutes. The state chairman explained these situations at conventions to try and get the information out. So there's a lot of different, and you and I could probably talk for an hour or two on this subject, and we'd have to go look it up. And so it's not one of my more knowledgeable areas.
All right. Well, Dave, thank you very much. I really appreciate the time that you've taken.
Well, you're welcome,
with me.
Phil,
Okay.
and glad we could at least maybe answer it. And a lot of things depend, Phil, on and lodges should utilize their state chairman and their district chairman, and they should get their questions out. And if they have at any time, if you have any questions or you don't feel something's right, you should always ask.
Okay.